Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to reflect on my reading goals from 2024 and also share what my goals and aims are for my reading and my writing in 2025. Every quarter last year I would review my goals and see how I was getting on, and admittedly some of my goals got thrown out of the window. To begin, I wanted to read the books from my shelves. I did that. I got through the majority of the books that I had at the start of 2024. There were quite a few unhauls and DNFs in there, but that was always going to be something that I did. I just didn't want the books to feel like a chore, so I gave myself free rein to DNF and to unhaul, and that helped me to kind of think about the books that I really did enjoy and hope that going forward I would be more aware of what I liked in fiction. I wanted to read the entirety of Elizabeth Taylor's catalogue. So I did finish reading all of Elizabeth Taylor's novels last year, and she is certainly a favourite writer and is somebody whose books I look forward to going back and revisiting. However, in August I started reading her complete short stories with the hopes of finishing that by the end of the year, and that didn't happen. I am quite a way through the short story collection, but not as far as I would have liked to have been. And this is simply because I process short stories differently from how I read a novel. So I would like to take my time over a short story and really mull over everything that the writer is writing about. Next, I had to read more Anthony Trollope with the hope of having read 10 of Anthony Trollope's novels by the end of 2024. And I missed out on this by one, I think. I read Taylor, Brown and Robinson, or was it Brown, Jones and Robinson? Either way, it was a book about haberdashers. I read The Vicar of Bullhampton. I read Mr. Scarborough's Family, and I started The Last Chronicle of Barset, but I didn't finish it. So that's the one that would take me over 10. I'm not too mad at this because I did recognise throughout the year that when it comes to Anthony Trollope, I actually like to take more than a month with them, and I really like to just take my time, and I don't want them to feel rushed because I like the author. So if I rush them, then I'm not going to get as much out of them because it might feel like a chore. Sometimes Anthony Trollope writes books that I want to get through incredibly quickly, like The Last Chronicle of Barset. But then I did slow down with that one. I have no plans to rush my reading of him just to get all of the books from my shelves read. I wanted to read more non-fiction. This was an aim that I quickly threw out. It was a goal that I got rid of because I just recognised that when it comes to non-fiction, I like a very specific type of non-fiction. I like it to be written in a very specific way, and I wish I hadn't put it in there as an aim or a goal now because it would have felt very forced. I did end up getting rid of a couple of the books that had sat on my shelves for a long time because I kept saying to myself, if I haven't read these books by the end of a month, then they need to go to the charity shop because I'm never going to do it. And that's what happened. Read more poetry. I did do this. I consumed more poetry last year simply because of Poems and Pints, and this was one of the only times that I would allow myself to buy new books, was to support any of the guests that we had who brought books along. So I would buy those books and I would read those because I didn't have many poetry collections unread on my shelves. So I did read more poetry. And when I say this, I actually read from a wider scope than I would ordinarily. Usually when it comes to poetry, I just buy from the poets I already know, and because I was only buying from the ones that came to the Poems and Pints events, I was able to explore different forms. Then I threw 3 writers on here that I wanted to read, works by Larry McMurtry, Cormac McCarthy and Anthony Quinn, and I ended up realising that the reason I'd stockpiled loads of books on my shelves is that whilst I'd enjoyed one book by the author, I didn't necessarily care for all the others that I had on my shelves. Cormac McCarthy I think I outgrew. I liked No Country for Old Men when I was a teenager, and I've never found another Cormac McCarthy that lived up to that I liked. Larry McMurtry, I love Lonesome Dove, one of my favourite books. Did not care for Streets of Laredo, so I wouldn't hold the rest of the books from my shelves. I felt like there was some needless violence in there that did nothing to further the narrative. And then Anthony Quinn. I started chatting with one of my volunteers about this author because they had found them at the library and read him and really enjoyed him, and so I went and I only didn't read one of the books of his from my shelves because I enjoyed one, I didn't enjoy the other, and I quickly recognised as well that I would be happy to get this author's books out of the library in future. I don't think I need to own this author anymore. Dedicate more time to reading. This was because I was going to start this whole thing of whenever I went to my phone and was thinking about opening social media, opening the Kindle app instead. I think I did that for about a month, and then I just tossed that aside. I do read more regularly because I try and read every single day, but I'm not reading tons every single day. So probably the year before last, I would read about 200 pages on a Tuesday and then try and read on my days off. Whereas last year, as if I read for 5 minutes and I only read a chapter or read a few pages, I was saying that it counted. And I did want to I wanted to do other things apart from reading last year. I wanted to find new TV shows to watch. I wanted to watch films and listen to more podcasts and music and that sort of thing, change the sort of media that I was consuming as well. So whilst I didn't dedicate more time to reading, I read the fewest books I'd read since 2018. I was reading every day. So, well, for the most part, I was reading every day. Obviously, when I got too busy to, it didn't happen. So yeah, I kind of failed that one. I listened to more audiobooks. Apparently, I only listen to audiobooks at the end of the year because from about October onwards, I was listening to audiobooks, maybe even September. So autumn months, yeah, me and audiobooks, we get along. But for whatever reason, spring, summer, me and audiobooks, didn't listen to a single one. So I think I listened to about 4 or 5 audiobooks last year. And yeah, that was that. I wouldn't make that a goal again because I have to be in the mood for an audiobook, and sometimes I simply wasn't. Those were my reading goals for 2024, and regardless of what anyone says, I am calling them a success because even the Cormac McCarthy, Larry McMurtry, Anthony Quinn one made me recognise that those were authors I didn't want to read anymore in future, so that was fine by me. But let us get into my goals for 2025. These are both reading and writing, and there are fewer reading ones than there are writing. There are only 3 goals for my reading this year. One is to read the Doctor Who books from my shelves, and this is one of the collections that I built up over a long time and then not read them. When I was much younger, me and a friend of mine would share Doctor Who books with each other. We were very big fans of it, and I would borrow the books from him. About a decade ago, I unhauled all of my Doctor Who collection and soon regretted it, but the charity shop of which I'd taken them had sold them all incredibly quickly, so I didn't have the option of buying them back. I have accumulated a lot on my shelves, and there are a lot there that I haven't read, and I decided since I'd read all of the books from my shelves, I have very few left to read, I would decide in 2025 I wanted to make a start on the Doctor Who book. So I'm currently on the 2nd one. I only want to focus on the 8th Doctor adventures at this point in time. He was always a favourite Doctor of mine because there was so much scope with the stories of his. And so I'm currently on Vampire Science, which I hadn't read before. They are very quick reads. I don't think that they are the most amazing, well-written books by any stretch of the imagination, but they're quite active, quite fast to get through, and so far my plan is to try and just get to them as and when, very piecemeal. I don't have a set number to try and read, but let's say that if I'd read 10 by the end of the year, then I'd be happy. I've got 2 authors that I want to focus on reading this year and read all of their works. So one of those is Barbara Pym, whose works I started exploring over the last 2 years, and I really would just like to see everything that she has written. And then the next one is Benjamin Myers, whose book Rare Singles I read at the end of last year, and I know that he is a writer who is writing a whole host of different styles and that sort of thing, so I want to explore his works as well. And finally, one of the main aims of reading the majority of the books from my shelves was to give myself the freedom to reread books. When I was younger, I only ever reread books because I don't know why I was about to say I was poor. I'm still poor. I don't have a lot of money about my person. And when I was younger, this meant rereading the same books over and over again. I have previously talked about how every weekend from about the age of 8, I would read The Bed and Breakfast Star by Jacqueline Wilson. I adored that book, and I had to read it from the light of the landing, lying back on my bed holding it like this because my older brother had to have the light off, and so I couldn't read in my room. And I would sit there, read that book cover to cover, go to sleep, and do it again the next week. My copy of that book fell apart, and I just want to look back at some of my favourite titles from the previous few years and see how they hold up. And so I really would like to reread more. I don't have a set aim for this. There is no number that I want to achieve. And similarly, there isn't a standard figure that I want to reach for my reading this year either. I am quite content with not trying to hit any sort of number. As I said, I read the fewest books last year that I'd read since 2018, and I wasn't mad at that. If I read less than that, if I read more than that, perfectly fine. Now I'm going to get into my writing goals. I have a book coming out next month. Mistakes Me Murder will be out on the 12th of February. And in 2025, I want to finish writing another novel. At the moment, this is the charity shop book, for I have that planned in its entirety. But if I also manage to make a start on the third Alice Valentine, that would be great. However, that isn't like the main focus thing we need to get done. I say this because while the charity shop book can stand on its own, there might be links towards the cozy crime novels. This is just who I am. It's what I've started doing, is connecting all of my books, Easter eggs and that sort of thing all over the place. You know, it's a good job I bring out the books myself, because I don't think any traditional publisher would allow all of these books to be connected in the ways that they are. I want to finish the second poetry collection. I have quite a lot of poems written for the second collection, and my aim now is to work on some landscape poems, fewer poems about characters, maybe some more personal poems, because the first collection was almost like a biography of my family and was very personal, and there are a lot of familial tales in there. But the second collection doesn't have a lot of me in there, and I don't know. I'm wondering if it needs it, whether I can write an impersonal collection that's just character pieces and that sort of thing. There is much more humour in the second collection than there was in the first. There is less brutality, there's less grim things, but I just want to get that finished. I also would like to develop a writing routine. I planned on trying to do this today, but that has not quite worked out the way that I wanted to. I am debating something that I was debating last year, which is writing for a set amount of time and then reading for a set amount of time. I think that if I develop a writing routine, it could help me to actually finish a book. It's what I did with the first Alice Valentine book. However, that isn't necessarily the best way for me, because I wrote that book incredibly quickly, sitting down for every single moment that I had over 3 weeks and blasting that thing out. And I don't necessarily want it to be like that, but I would like to be some routine to my writing, which hasn't been there before. And finally, I would like to hold 30 events for my books. This is a difficult one because a lot of the libraries around me are having reduced hours, and I do currently have 3 or 4, it might be 4 events booked for with a library, but I'm also counting all the Poems and Pints events, so that takes us up to 11, and with the 4 that I've just mentioned, we're at 15, which means I'm halfway there already. I just need to find another 15 events. I need to find places that will allow me to go and read, which will allow me to share my books with people, and that hasn't happened as yet, but hopefully we've got time to do that as the year progresses. I just want to try and make a go of things properly with my writing, try and get my books seen by more people, and maybe sell a few copies and actually get to the point that I can complete a tax return, because I have been running at a loss now since 2017. And if it weren't for the work at the charity shop, then I'd be beggared, really. I haven't really had much success with my writing since Our Doris, 2015 was a great year, 2016 was okay. I had a lot of events, I was attending open mics, I was doing loads of stuff, but now I regularly get the question, are you still writing? And it's a shame, but that's where we are. So this year I would really like to try and knuckle down and get more people knowing about my books. So that's that. Those are my goals for 2025. What are some of your aims this year? Feel free to let me know in the comments. If you've read Barbara Pym or Benjamin Myers and would suggest I head somewhere sooner rather than later, then please feel free to recommend any of their books as well. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.